Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here. Welcome back to another video on Grey Zone Warfare. Today we have a lot of new information to go over. The closed playtest has of course concluded. I had a great time in the playtest. The game honestly played way better than I thought it ever would. Yes, it was a very early alpha build, and so there were bugs and things like that in the game, and you guys will have noticed that. And there's also a lot of great information here on how Madfinger Games, the developers, intend to tackle a lot of these bugs, a lot of the issues that we found with the game. We're also going to be getting a release date for early access fairly soon as well, and then they just went a little bit more in depth into just what we can expect from early access going forward over, let's say, the next year of the game's lifespan and what they plan to add to the game overall. But guys, before we get started, if you do enjoy the content here on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. I will be covering this game going forward. Like I said, I really had a great time in the test, so I'm going to be definitely picking this one up on release and giving it a go. I also cover a lot of Battlefield here on the channel, so if that sounds like something that tickles your fancy, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you guys so much for the support. Okay, so let's just get straight into it here because there is a lot to cover. So one of the first things they said, that when early access does finally release, that will actually only be around 20% of the game. The build that I played the other day, the questing system was quite rudimentary. It was more like a framework to allow you to get out into the open world and experience the things that are there. But, you know, the quests themselves were pretty simple. You just picked up a box, you know, pressed F on something to mark it essentially. There really wasn't like all that much lore. And so I have no doubt that a lot of these things are going to be fleshed out more in the future. And what they were really going for in this early test was like the core gameplay loop. And luckily the core gameplay loop was very enjoyable to me. They also mentioned, and a lot of you guys were asking this on my streams, that console support may be coming after early access. So at the moment their focus is just getting the build that they have in as playable state as they can, squashing the bugs, optimizing the gameplay loop that they have at the moment and getting it into people's hands. All of the content is going to be built on top of that, and then once it gets in the position where they feel like Sony and Microsoft are going to look at this game and want to bring it onto their platform, maybe when it's gained a little bit more notoriety, they will then look into bringing it to console. Now they also mentioned they are working on some sort of a roadmap. Their plan is to have a big content update every 6 months during early access, and whenever those content updates happen, they are going to wipe all progression because these are going to be pretty big changes to the game. And for the first big update after early access, they're going to be introducing a day-night cycle, which I really think is going to add a lot of awesome atmosphere to this game. And of course, you're going to have everything that you need for that, like night vision goggles, IR scopes, and all of that stuff. AI will also go to sleep, for example, or they'll be camping somewhere, and you know, they'll sort of shut down for the evening and their patrols will come to a halt. So the time of day that you choose to take on a particular quest is going to have a big effect there. Now, one of the big problems in the test that I participated in was that at a lot of the landing zones, people would simply camp there from the other factions, and you couldn't fire from the helicopters. So as soon as you landed in the Little Bird, you leapt off there, you were under gunfire almost instantaneously, and there was just no way that you were going to make it out of there alive, especially since the Little Bird often landed in the middle of a wide open rice paddy. But they're not going to change it, first of all, so that you can now shoot from helicopters. So if you're flying in and you see people camping, you will be able to shoot at them. I do wonder, however, how easy it's going to be to hit people from a flying Little Bird. And they also said they're going to have a sporadic landing zone. So instead of landing always in the exact same position, if you see a helicopter coming into an LZ, you don't know exactly where they're going to land. It's going to be somewhat randomized, so people can't always camp the same spot. They also talked a little bit about identifying enemies. So for any of you guys who watched the playtest, you really couldn't tell your teammates of your own faction apart from the enemy factions. And a lot of people left feedback in the Discord saying, for example, that perhaps the different factions should wear a different armband or have a different camouflage pattern so that you could identify them straight away as soon as you scope in on somebody. But they actually said that they wanted this to be part of the gameplay loop, where if you see somebody, you're not sure if they're part of your faction or not, you have to check your map, you have to be sure that you're not shooting a friendly. I do have a video coming out in a few days of some of my PvP highlights, because on the last day of the playtest, everybody was just going ham. Obviously, nobody cared about their gear at this point, and PvP was rampant. So I had a lot of great moments there where I did have to bring up my map, even though there was a soldier right in front of me, and make sure that it wasn't a friendly. So I don't think they want something that makes them instantly identifiable, but they are thinking about this and may implement something in the future. They also said that FOBs, or the home bases, are going to have some more defense. Those were kind of getting overrun by enemy factions a little bit too easy. The Spongey AI was a bug in the game. Sometimes you would shoot somebody in the head, like an AI soldier in the head, and they would go down with one shot. Other times you could literally unload an entire magazine into their chest and they still wouldn't die. That was a bug, and it was due to the complicated ballistics code that they have in the game, which replicates internal wounds and things like that. I do believe they have fixed that for the most part, so that's great to hear as well. They're also going to have a faction radio, so right now in the game there's only proximity VoIP and squad VoIP, which you can share with the other 3 members of your squad only, but they're also going to implement faction radio so that if your base camp is under attack, you can call all members of your faction to perhaps come home and help defend. They're going to have real-time quests for PvP as well, so let's say one of the enemy factions is invading your base camp. A new quest will probably pop up with a task, for example, to kill X amount of enemy players on the faction, and you will get rewards for that. The economy in the game is going to be changing quite a lot as well. Most people who experienced the playtest that I did will probably vouch for the fact that money was almost worthless. Like, you got so much gear in the game and so much money that you could just constantly rebuy things. So that has changed now, and it is going to be a lot different in early access. Money is going to be more meaningful, and they've also got a lot of loot around the map that is not necessarily just useful, but also good as a sellable item. Many people also wondered whether they will be able to change faction once they'd chosen it at the beginning of the game. That will be possible, but you're not going to be able to do it like every day. Also, on the topic of weapon modifications, the screen and the system that we had in-game in the test was not final. They do have a fully fleshed out weapon modification screen. They just didn't have time to get it in that particular build, so that will be coming in early access as well. Then they said they were also planning to introduce weather effects into the game, so as you might imagine, weather in that area of Asia, in Laos and around there, Thailand, Myanmar, where the game's fictional country of Lemang is supposed to be set. Weather gets pretty crazy. It's like monsoon, there are intense rainstorms, and that is something that they're going to be implementing. And you can just imagine, based on the foliage system that they have that reacts to things like the downdraft of the helicopters, it's going to look so insane when the wind starts blowing and the rain starts coming. The rivers are going to fill. They're also considering having things like the rice paddies get a little bit more full of water, and it will also affect your health system in some way. I'm going to assume negatively. Now, as for the number of weapons in the game, they do have 50 guns or so planned for early access, with special customized guns available from bosses. So these will sort of be like gang leaders, and they'll drop certain unique weapons that have specific modifications. Many people were wondering if there'll be any sort of a market or a black market in the game to allow players to trade from one person to another. That is not going to be in the game because it sort of ruins the progression, right? You can just go on that marketplace, and as long as you have the money, you can basically just buy like end-game weapons and attachments. That's not something they want to happen. At the moment, what you unlock from the NPC vendors is in comparison to how many quests you've completed, your reputation status with that vendor, and what level you are in the game. So they do want to have the gear somewhat gated behind that, although in the test that I played, you could simply have somebody buy you gear who has that particular vendor at a high reputation level, and then just drop it for you, which to me kind of felt like you were skipping a lot of the progression. I got the best weapon in the game pretty early on. They're also going to have capturable bases around the map that will be used for your faction as a spawn point, and you'll also unlock unique vendors there that you can trade with. And the goal here is basically it's going to be sort of a changing world. So you might log off and your faction has control of certain capturable bases. Next time you log in, that may not be the case anymore. They also said that they plan to implement body dragging. That will be there at some point after early access comes out. And on the topic of shared progression, because you can play this game on 2 different types of servers, you can go for PvEVP, which is what we were playing on, or you can just do the PvE experience. So if you don't want to deal with players ganking and flanking and just generally coming and attacking you, you can have a fully PvE experience and just team up with other people. But these 2 modes will actually have shared progression, so you don't have to fully commit to a PvE experience if that's where you want to start by playing the game. You will then be able to move over to a PvEVP server and not lose any of your gear. All of that progression will just carry over, which I think is a good thing and a bad thing. It means that you don't have to commit to a certain server type like you kind of had to do with World of Warcraft, for example, back in the old days. But at the same time, it is maybe open to abuse. Like, for example, you could just gear up your character in PvE servers, and then you can hop into the PvP server and essentially spend all of your time with your high-level gear going after lesser geared players. They did say this is something that's on their radar and that they are certainly concerned about, so they will keep an eye on it and act accordingly. And to finish this video out here, we've got two really big pieces of news. So on Monday, that is tomorrow, the 29th of April, they are going to announce when the game is coming out. So it's the old, there's going to be an announcement that there will be an announcement. So tomorrow is not the release date, but they're going to tell us when the early access release date will be tomorrow, if that makes sense. So keep your eyes peeled to Twitter, the internet in general. I'm super excited to see when this is because I can't wait to jump back into the game again. And on that same note here, let's take a look at the different versions and the prices that will be available. So we've got the standard edition, which is $35. Then you have the tactical edition, which is $58. The elite edition is $80. And then the supporter edition is $100. So no $250 edition here, like with some other games. And of course, the biggest change you're going to notice here is that your locker size, which is basically where you store your weapons and ammunition in your base camp when it's not on your person, gets a little bit larger with each edition here. Also, your secure lockbox, which is like a lockbox that you carry on your person, and whatever you put in there, even if you die, you will not lose that. So for example, keys, quest items you can put in there, that also gets larger with each edition. And then you get a little bit more in-game currency and you get some more equipment as you start off the game. Now, if you head over to Steam, you can of course see all the information on exactly what you're getting from each edition of the game. But I can probably tell you guys, as somebody who has played it before, the biggest thing here is the size of your locker and the size of the secure lockbox. As far as I know, you're not going to be able to upgrade those things in-game by paying. I might be wrong on that, but at least from what I saw in the test, you just got that size of locker and that was it. As for the money in-game and all of the weapons and items here, you can of course just earn those in-game, so that isn't like as big of a deal. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention, if you get the supporter edition, you'll also of course get a Grey Zone Warfare t-shirt and gloves, which will be, I assume, unique in-game cosmetics. You'll also have a special supporter name color and get an exclusive supporter badge. But one key thing here is you will be able to upgrade your edition. So, you know, if you go for that standard edition, you just pay $35, which I think is a very fair price actually for this game and what it's offering here. You can jump into that game, and then later on, if you feel the need, you can upgrade for the difference in cost to one of the other more advanced editions. So if you find that you're playing tons and tons of hours of this game and you think, you know what, I think it's going to be worth it to get that elite edition or the supporter edition, just so I can have the bigger locker size or the secure lockbox, or just because you want to support Madfinger Games, then you will totally be able to do that. So there you go. That is about going to do it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed today, leave a like down below. Go and check out this video here if you missed my initial impressions on the game. Subscribe for more Grey Zone Warfare, and I'll see you guys in the next one.